Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Tygers of Tang, and honestly, this lesson's been on the back burner here for my channel for a few years, and yesterday it was announced, unfortunately, that John Sykes passed away. That news hit me right in the gut, and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what, let's fire up that Tygers of Tang, lesson as a tribute. So definitely an influential, very important band. Tygers of Tang formed in England in 1978. Over the course of their career, they've released 13 studio albums, 6 live albums, and 10 compilations. And no offense to the other incarnations and members of Tygers of Tang, but I'm serving this episode up as a tribute to John Sykes. We've looked at Whitesnake, we've looked at Blue Murder. There's 3 for All episodes looking at some of John's licks. So now we're going to finally tackle Tygers of Tang, so buckle up. So it's really important to remember that Tygers of Tang literally launched John Sykes' career. And you have to remember this is long before Blue Murder and Whitesnake and Thin Lizzy. This was really like his first major label, kind of major move. I think he was in a band before Tygers of Tang, but definitely this helped put him on the map. He technically recorded 2 albums with this group in 1981, the albums Spellbound and Crazy Nights, and shared guitar duties with Rob Weir. And when you trace John Sykes' career and his playing, and you listen to Tygers of Tang and then compare that to Thin Lizzy, and then you take that and compare it to Whitesnake, and take that and compare it to Blue Murder, and then eventually his solo stuff, it's really interesting to notice his growth as a musician, because he was playing a lot different back in the early years with Tygers of Tang. He definitely, improved a lot and grew as a musician by the time he hooked up with Thin Lizzy. And then he really grew and excelled by the time he hooked up with Coverdale and joined Whitesnake. So it's really interesting to notice John Sykes' musicianship and his ability, his technique, his soloing, his riffs, his pinch harmonics, and everything just grew with every band that he joined and played with. The chord-based and rhythm guitar parts in this episode came from 2 Tygers of Tang albums, and that's Spellbound and Crazy Nights. And John does appear on the follow-up to Crazy Nights. There's a couple tracks on that where he does play. But we're going to basically just center on 1981 Tygers of Tang, when John was rocking out with the band. So buckle up. The opening, that's Gangland from the album Spellbound, and it's this busy kind of double stop, early 80s hard rock riff like this. Something like that. So we're in A, and he's basically grabbing these double stops and partial chords. So think of A right there, and you're grabbing that, 5th fret double stop there and going back to that A note, and he starts moving between that A and G there. And then right there, grab the C, B to A right there, and then a G power chord to like a D over A. And after you do that like 4 times, then you start grabbing like this partial A minor 7 right there. So instead of that higher, double stop on the 5th fret on the G and the B, now you're grabbing the 5th fret on the D and the G. Like that. Which is kind of a contrast to that higher one. Having it right there. Definitely a really cool, rock out song right there. Kicks ass. Next up's the song Take It from the album Spellbound, and there's a lot of Spellbound, the album, in this lesson. But Take It something like this. Something like that. So we're using these 70s kind of inversions in the beginning, and then it just changes to like straight power chords after that. So think of that like a G over E to that D over E, like that. And then that A to E right there. Right, so right there. And that big slide off that E note. That riff's established, it shifts, like when everything kind of kicks in, then it just changes to an E power chord to like a D over E, and then E sus4 right there. D sus4 to, E sus4 to E major. And then when it changes those power chords, instead of doing that slide, he starts walking down G, F sharp to E. Like that. Next up's the song Hellbound from the album Spellbound, and it's this busy new wave, of British heavy metal double stop riff like this. Something like that. And we're just doing these partial chords once again in A. So you can think of that like A minor 7. So A minor 7 right there, and like an A sus4 right there, A sus2 right there, and then that's like an A7 sus4 implied, and then A6 sus4 implied. So there's a melody happening with those partial chords. And then right there, he's actually hitting a harmonic on the 5th fret on the G string and dives his bar, or wiggles the bar. But that's the riff right there. Next up's the song Don't Stop By from Hellbound, and this is really interesting. I think it's actually harmonized between both guitars, because I don't think it's actually just played on one guitar, the way I'm getting ready to demonstrate it here. I think they may have divided it up and then recorded it, where it came together, but you can actually play it with just one guitar. It sounds something like this. Something like that. So it's just little partial chords. It's like a part of, E minor, and then it's part of C major, and then it's part of D major, and then part of A7, right? So it's just little fragments of chords, like 3 strings, of those chords. E minor right there, and you're just kind of picking through it. Or actually just kind of doing like downstroke strums like that, not picking, strumming like that. So E minor to a little partial C major, a little partial D major right there, like a D over A. And then right there you're going to add that E and G, that changes that to an A7 implied, and then back to that D over A. So that's the intro part, and listen to it and you can hear how it has that harmonized like dual guitar sound, but you can definitely fake it with just one guitar, just like that. So it's not really hard to play, it's just cool, it sounds cool. Next up's the song Never Satisfied. This is from the album Crazy Nights, and it's something like this. Something like that. So it's not really that hard to play, it just rocks out. So that ringing low E5, let that ring for a minute, and then that A5 to a G with some authority and just kind of, vibrato, and then that E5 again twice, and then you've got this bouncy riff off the low E right there. So that low E, F sharp to E, G to E, and then A, G to low E. Almost sounds like Peter Gunn, just a little different. And then this D to C power chord, and let it ring. And then do that E riff again. And then the second time you want to do C to D power chords. Next up's the song Lonely Man. This is from the album Crazy Nights, and this totally reminds me of Dokken. So I have a feeling that Don Dokken and company are big Tygers of Tang fans, because it really does have this Dokken kind of sound, like this. Something like that. So we're once again doing these partial chords, that A5, and then just open up that D and G string right there, so it's like G over A, I guess. And then right there, you're basically doing that over A. So you could think of that a couple different ways, like an A6 sus4, like that, because you're doing that open A, F sharp, and that D note. And then that F, the G power chords there at the end. Definitely a very influential riff, and like I said, it reminds me of Dokken, so that might have been an influence as far as where Dokken got some of their sound. Alright, last but not least is the song Mirror. This is from the album Spellbound, and it's this clean, arpeggiated, kind of dreamy chord part, like this. Eventually does change. There's some cool chords hiding in this one. E minor add 9, like a C major 7. Something like that. But that first part, we're basically doing an E sus2 right here. That chord part definitely caught my attention when I first heard it there. So think of an E sus2 like that, and But we're really just playing the top part, and it's like an E sus2 over B, I guess, technically, and pick it like this. Something like that. And then right there, we're going to basically do this. That's a C add 9 right there. So think of like a C sus2, but then open up, the high E. It's like a C add 9 over G, I guess, technically. So you've got this and that, for this opening part right there. This example mainly because the clean guitar chords, it reminded me of some of those clean chords that appear in Still of the Night from Whitesnake. So this kind of made me think of, things that were coming in the future from John Sykes. And that's definitely a very early kind of dreamy chord part from him. Really cool. All right, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the Chords of Tygers of Tang. And definitely, the news broke yesterday, and when I saw the announcement that John had passed, it really did kind of just knock me out, where it was like, you got to be kidding me. And then I started listening to Whitesnake. I was listening to Blue Murder, and then I couldn't help but just kind of jump over there and listen to some Tygers of Tang, and I was like, yeah, we haven't hit this yet. I've been meaning to. Like I said, this has been on the back burner for a couple years now. And then when the announcement came, and I thought about John yesterday, and was sitting here playing guitar, listening to his music, and was really bummed out. I thought, man, how am I going to bounce out of this bad mood and this kind of, down news that I heard? And I thought, well, let's jump into his music and celebrate his life and music. And, like I said, I've already hit, Whitesnake and Blue Murder, but we hadn't really hit Tygers of Tang. Definitely very influential, very important. And you got to think, when Spellbound and Crazy Nights came out, that really did light a big fire with a lot of that hard rock and metal that was starting to appear at that time. And there's lots of bands and musicians that point to Tygers of Tang as a big influence. Definitely an ass-kicking band. And John Sykes really was an ass-kicking guitarist. Definitely a huge influence on me. So rest in peace, John Sykes. And stay tuned for more content and material. Please subscribe to Layout Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.